Tēnā koutou te kaua and te whānau. Thank you. I think I'll just get started. I'm Catherine Morrison from the University of Otago, and I'm sharing with you today the work from the National Monitoring Study that looks at curriculum, all curriculum learning areas in the New Zealand curriculum. So specifically talking about health and physical education. So apologies from Jane White. She's actually the driver of this project, but she's been unwell and unable to come. So I'm presenting the work that we've been doing for the last number of years and going to share with you, oops, if it moves, the resource which is called Insights for Teachers, which has come out in 2019. So the National Monitoring Study is based at the University of Otago, but it's a Ministry of Education project. So it's basically assessing children at Year 4 and Year 8 in all curriculum areas. And this data then goes to the ministry. So in the last few years, I think I'm going to find myself having to push this, not sure how I'll do that. So the data that the study gets together looks at these different areas. So it looks at achievement across the curriculum in health and PE. This one is specific, is what we're looking at today. It asks students questions about what influences their learning at school. Example, if they've got the internet at home. And this is 2,500 students per year are part of this data gathering. It also looks at monitoring priority learners, which we know is a priority across the curriculum as well. And it looks at measuring change over time. So I'm giving you sort of the front end of what this is about before we have a look and see what the type of work that we've now presented. So it's every 5 years that a curriculum area sort of hits the time, and this is going to be the curriculum area that will be assessed. So you can see we're in our second cycle. I think it's about an $11 million contract that Otago has with the ministry to deliver these 5 years of cycle. So there is a team of statisticians, there are developers who work in producing assessment tasks, and again, it's right across the curriculum. At the same time as specifically looking at curriculum areas, they also look at literacy, numeracy, key competencies, and ask children questions about those areas, and they also look at trends across the 5 years. So what is changing for what our students know about the curriculum area. So it's nationally representative across the country, 200 schools. 2017 was the last time health and PE was assessed, and there are 12 students at each school in an in-depth study. So Year 4, Year 8, and basically 2,500 students. One of the interesting things was in 2017, they had what they called schools that this time refused to take part, because in some areas of the country they didn't want their children involved and out of the classroom. And it was the first time they had even noticed this trend towards parents not consenting to have their children out, because it's about 2 or 3 days in each school that the students are away from the classroom, and they go through these assessment tasks. So that was the first time, 2017, they saw this change. And in certain geographic locations throughout the country, we don't want our children not learning and being out of the classroom. So there's 40 teachers are seconded in term 3, and I don't know if anyone else has ever done this. I met someone who had done this here, Marissa, I think, that we went to a session. So 40 teachers in term 3 are seconded out of their schools, and they are practicing teachers. And they go out and administer these tasks in these 200 schools. So there's a mix of tasks, group administrated assessments, so a whole class will be on a laptop and they'll be answering questions. they might watch a video and be asked questions about it, and they'll respond. Some of them are interviewed one-on-one, and they might do something like draw a picture, and I'll show you one of those that they've, an example of that. Draw a picture one day, and the second day they are asked a question about it. Movement skills is something I'm going to show you today. So that's groups of 4 students, always in groups of 4, engaging in tasks that the team wants to make sure are enjoyable as such. So they become sort of more games focused. And then there's a questionnaire, and the questionnaire asks them things like, how many times do you have health a week? And they will say, we don't do health, or I don't know what that is, especially children at year 4. So they're asked questions about, do they feel that they are good at something? So looking at self-efficacy, are they good at PE, are they good at health? The same types of questions, not exactly the same obviously, are asked of teachers and principals. So at all of those schools, the teachers and principals are asked questions. For example, what kind of professional development have you had? Do you have external providers come into the schools? Can you name them? So that is also part of this, this study. So what happened initially, and I'll give you this out first, is at the end of, when this data gets collected and analysed and reported on, the ministry sent out a flyer that looks like this in the Gazette, and said to teachers in schools, you know, this is what we found out. So if you have a look at it, I think what NMSSA, based at the university, also looked and thought was, who was this helpful for? Who was using this? So the University of Otago, in this group called the National Monitoring Study of Student Achievement, said to the Ministry of Education, we think we should be able to do something better for teachers. So how can we give them information about what we're finding out in a whole year, about 2,500 students at year 4 and year 8, what they know about physical education and health, and assessing them against the curriculum. What can we give them? So that's when we had this production come out. So this was the first one that came out in that group. So I'm going to pass you that over because now that replaces our little flyer, and I'll come back to what's in this. One of the things that happens is this is just not a set of assessment tasks that is dreamed up. So in front of me, I know that we've had Kirsten, we've had Vicky. We have a panel of experts that come, and they'll come to Dunedin in probably October this year. And this group that leads this study says to them, okay, tell us what's important about health and physical education in the curriculum. What do you think we should be asking students and assessing them in their knowledge of health and curriculum? Because we can't do the whole curriculum. It's, you know, there's a lot of AOs, although the AOs are tracked. So this is an example of what happened in 2017. And I said to Kirsten today that she was in New York. She was zooming in. We've had, and I'm thinking of people that are here at the conference, Jenny Robinson for health, Vicky representing health. Who else have we had, Vicky? We had teachers from schools. Yeah, Darren Powell, Lizette Burrows. So people come in, we probably have a team of between 12 and 14, plus teachers. Pacifica, Māori teachers come in, and experts in that field will come in and look at maybe what we're going to look at. So this is what they said, and this is a really important page. It's on page 10 of that booklet I've just given you. And so this is what this expert group said. Instead of saying we want to know if they could throw, how far they can throw a ball, Or do they know how to brush their teeth? They said these things. We want to know if they're critical thinkers, and do they understand different perspectives, points of view? Can they justify opinions? Can they look at information and examine it? Can they challenge information? What about society? And I think about the determinants of well-being, you know, and reminded in this conference how important they are for us to understand. You know, do they understand at year 8 the impacts that they have on our lives? Can they take action? And I'll show you one of the tasks that goes with this. So if we think about critical thinkers, actually, can they take action? They might just critically think, but what else can they do? And it's about self, other, society. So all of these things, big picture thinking. So once this team, and they'll come together, and I believe there might be some changes this October. I've got a feeling that we might change this a little bit. That's my feeling. Jane normally is here at this conference. It's a really important conference because we look and we hear, you know, what are some of the kind of threads that are coming through the conference that we need to be thinking about. But then we'll bring these people in and they'll say, okay, yeah, no, that looks great. You know, you don't need to change anything there. We want you to think about this being your construct, and you'll devise tasks that we will see if children are able to do these things. So although we're assessing against the curriculum, there is this construct behind it that's about critical thinking, which I sometimes think doesn't come alive when we just pick it up and look at the... Yeah. I'm not saying it's completely changed.
How does that work with the measures and comparing the phases?
Okay, so there are trend tasks. Yeah. They do well-being, haora, every year, and that's at the back of that book. And it's an amazing task. And it asks students to think about, you know, what are the things in their lives that keep them happy and healthy, and they draw pictures. And some of them use the model of haora. There's one we put in there, and it's a young girl, and she's year 8, and she draws on that model of well-being. So, Tanya, in answering that, I don't think it'll completely change, but there might be something that, you know, because it's an evolution of, you know, what do we think's important.
Can I also say, if it didn't change, we would still be looking at throwing a picture.
That's right.
That would not reflect the curriculum.
And so that is an...
process alongside a measuring
Yeah.
process, I'd say.
So for those of you who weren't aware before, it was called NEMP, and they did things like they measured how far you could throw a ball, how far you could jump, and they were tasks that were done.
Years ago,
Yeah.
we timed their running.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's how it
Yeah.
changes.
Jump on and land on something.
One kid never came back.
And so 2017 was the first year we actually assessed movement in a way that looked at, and I'll show you how that was done. Before, that they just had a gap really. They said we can't see how far a kid throws a ball anymore. That's just ridiculous. Why is that important to us? So this group say, look, that's not important. These are the things that are important. So we're understanding how children interpret movement, and if they can interpret the movement of others was one of the things that came out, you know, of this group coming together. So I'm going to kind of take you through how the book looks a little, if I can find my glasses, kind of, because I can't read. So one of the things that thanks for that. Needed that. Okay, so this is a way of kind of looking at the way you can use this book for a start. So the part 1, when we're on about page 4 here, so part 1 is kind of telling you a little bit about the health and physical education learning area. And page 5 is talking about the tasks. For example, do they recognise stereotypes? Can they think critically about a message in a story? Can they justify their positions? You know, so these are kind of things that we ask them to do. In movement, can they participate actively or do they opt out? Some children do. Can they move in a range of ways? Can they think strategically? So those few pages and the next few I would just flick over as far as what we want to have a look at today. Because part 2, which is on page 10, is kind of the start of what critical thinking in health and PE looked on. And we see that critical thinking page that I just talked about. They look at the key competencies, but that's something that's done right throughout all the different areas. On page 12, we've got a learning activity. And this is why it would be lovely that schools and teachers knew that this resource existed. Because here's an example of a task that's kind of linked to health, really. And it's talking about playgrounds. And what we wanted to do was get a task that was multi-layered in some ways. So what are playgrounds important for? So we showed them a video of the Margaret Mayhew playground in Christchurch here, which was busy full of children. And so on page 13, they watch, you can see what they do, they watch the playground, and we asked them to think about what playing in playground does for children, whānau and communities. And they get asked questions. You know, what might playing in the playground do for children? You know, and then in it, the children, it's quite a scary looking place on the opening day. And what can you do to help children that might feel scared, noisy? There's a video clip about a dad whose daughter had cerebral palsy, and he went on Facebook and said, oh, it's a terrible place. I don't know if anyone ever saw this. And so we asked them questions about what should playgrounds have for children with disabilities. This is all on page 13, and then he writes a letter to the City Council. And so what happens over the next few pages, which is just amazing to read, is what the children said. And it tells us as well kind of what percentage of children were hitting at year 4 or year 8 on the curriculum, and they're the little percentage of responses. But I won't focus on those right now. But on page 17, there's a year 4 boy who says, you know, that dad could have gone on social media, and he starts to say, because like most people who have phones go on social media, Facebook, FaceTime, all those things, you get messages across and they'll see the messages. My mum always goes on Facebook. She sees all these messages, so my mum could probably see that message if he put it out there. And the council probably uses social media as well. So the council would use that as, you know, as well. So what we were looking to see is, do they know what kind of actions people can take? Did they know that playgrounds were a good place to be? Did they understand that it didn't cost any money? And some of the children do talk about that. So we're looking at those, social determinants of health. Do they understand that? What happens in the next, and so I'm giving you a structure as to how a task is presented. So on page 18 we say, what did we learn? So year 8 students, 84% of them knew about inclusivity. They knew about children's rights. And then 50%, over 50% of the year 4 children referred to inclusion. And then the next section so this is how the tasks are all presented, are the implications for health. And this gets us to think about what could we be doing with our students in schools. We could do this in secondary schools really well. Scrutinising our own playgrounds and looking at, issues around equitable places for children to play. They could ask who gets to play where and why. Who is advantaged by that? Who is disadvantaged? So each of the tasks kind of is presented in this way. So what do we want to learn? What do we find out? What do the children say? And therefore, what can we do as teachers? How could we use this in our classrooms? So these, of course, aren't all the tasks. These are just some of them. There's one here about the girl who writes a letter about making toys. You know, girls are sitting around, boys have got hard hats on. You know, is that fair? And you'll see, you know, they ask. They're being stereotypical. So that's one of the other tasks that's presented within in the health context. And so again, we say, what are the implications for health and PE? There's one here, if I get a chance to show that, an important message, and that's the one that's on page 26. And I think this is a really great task for our students to say, in your community, what's an important task? What's an important message that you want to get through, you know, to your community? And of those 2,500 students, there were so many different geographic responses. Some said, don't bring knives to school. Don't drink alcohol, you know, after school. Some said, make sure you wear sunscreen. Have tissues in your class and water. So you could see across the country and in different spots how communities saw what was important. And then they're asked, how do you get that message across? And actually, that wasn't done particularly well, and you'll remember that. They all might make posters. You know, and so that told us a little bit about maybe the types of ways we're getting children to critically think, but what's the action that children and young people could take in their schools when they want to get a message across. So that task was quite interesting. I've got a little video clip up there of that I can show you as well, but it's just the understanding that this book, this resource, takes the same approach for each task. And then when we get to part 3, it's about movement and stop ball. I'm going to show you a video clip of some students doing that. And sort of 2 more tasks that are there. And then it goes through NMSSA always look at wellbeing. And so that's there as well. And they always look at a key competency. They look at numeracy. They use Fitbit for that. Children was wearing Fitbit, but that was a numeracy task. It wasn't really looking at physical education. It was looking at how can they interpret this information, and they using a Fitbit. So I'll show you the stop ball task. If I can get this to move away again. I don't know why it's sort of freezing on me here. No. Yeah, I don't know why it's frozen just there. Oh, thanks, Sally. So while we have that little break, comments so far. I'm going to show you students doing these tasks and talking about them. So we presented the health ones before. We hadn't done the phys ed ones at a conference, so decided to show that. And part of, so we present, we actually used, Alan and Wayne had a paper out about techniques of a skill. And it looked at perception, being able to read the environment, about strategy, and we use that as a framework to mark children in action and moving. So we're going to have a wee look at that. But so there's 2 tasks there to have a look at, and yeah, we piloted. Vicky might. We pilot before we go out into schools, obviously, in all parts of the country, but starts off in Dunedin. And Vicky won't mind me, she's a principal at Port Chalmers, and won't mind me saying when we were talking about some of the tasks for the students, what is it that you would like to play if you could here at school? And one wee boy put his hand up and he said, table tennis. He said, the tables are over in the shed, but they're broken. We can't use them. And that got us thinking about taking a stock take of equipment rooms at schools, because that often dictates what happens in the physical education space in our schools. So what's on offer? So in the phys ed part of this, implications, it talks about having a look in your phys ed shed. because that's probably how the children play. That's probably how your physical education program is structured.
That
But-
facts. I'd like you to know.
Is there any way to correlate the results that have come through to the kind of PE program that's on offer in the primary schools? Because obviously every primary school will have a different program. It might have a specialist teacher, they might have classroom teachers delivering it. That was my first question.
The data belongs, I suppose, it belongs with the ministry. It's for policy development. What we're trying to do with this insight. So this is, they now are bringing out them for each subject area. So this is 2019. So it's only, 2020 was a wee bit of a stalemate in getting it out there. But we're wanting teachers to have a look at the information and the tasks really and the questions around it.
Is it just a video?
No, it's just I'm trying to move it to the next slide and it won't because it's sort of that is jamming stuff,
Yeah, you just need to.
just like that.
Just, uh,
I don't know, is that answering your question?
No.
What are you asking?
I'm trying to say that obviously we go and canvass these 200 students, was it?
2,500 students get
2,500
assessed
students.
at year,
Year 4 and 8.
Yep.
Obviously, the PE programs that they have in their schools
are all different.
Very, very different.
Absolutely.
And I was wondering if there was any correlation data on the results in relation to the type of program that they're actually
No.
experiencing.
No.
You
No.
schools would
You
be-
know,
What
if
it
was
does-
as simple as
Yeah.
there was a specialist teacher in the school.
Yeah, yeah.
It's delivered by
You
class
could,
teachers.
that's a good question. Now there's another one that we could add. Is there a specialist PE teacher in your
That's why
school?
we
Just
do
an
a
example.
question, 'cause that's a good question as well.
So it could be something that could be asked. We ask about external providers. It's
Yeah, it's just,
what I'm hearing what you're saying, but I suppose it's looking challenging.
It would skew the answer
It's also
depending on their experience with their
Yeah.
teachers.
But also, some of that gets skewed by the external opportunities that some kids get and other kids don't. So you can't define it to
Yeah,
a
yeah,
physical education program,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It could be the co-curricular, extracurricular, and the family environment. side.
Sorry.
Which class we
Oh, Morca 33P, small case, MORCA 33P.
awesome. I'll just try something before
Yeah.
we do that.
The results show, just like we heard today, lower the decile, the lower the results were for all of these children, and not just in health, across all curriculum areas. Lower for Māori students, and then it's just across every learning area. It is the same at present. Yeah, I'm wanting you to ask me questions.
Why year 4 and year 8?
I think just picking in the primary space, new entrances would be quite difficult to do, so it's level 2 and level 4. What it is showing us, and if I ever get back onto that, is that at year 8, students are not meeting level 4 of the curriculum. Under half are, and the reasons we are making a assumption about is that at year 8, are they getting specific teaching in health and physical education that is regular? It has to be specific because it's got to link to our curriculum, and
So that kind of goes back to the question I asked them.
yeah.
Okay.
So the results are showing that at year 8 they do not meet level 4 of the curriculum.
Based on these tasks.
Yep,
Yeah.
and other tasks
All the learning areas
are the same.
all
Yeah, the arts,
before and
drama.
that's been historical, so just, I guess, they can then compare longitudinal as well.
Yes.
How much, so this is, if the ministry pays for this to be done to advise policy,
Yep.
how does that happen? And is it happening? And is there something that some organisations can do to help that happen?
The ministry are now very aware of NMSSA. Oh, they were paying to have all this done, But with the numeracy and the literacy standards, national standards gone, this has been in the media a lot more about NMSSA. But I can't answer for them. I thought it would be nice to have some of those ministry people here because, you know, it'd be quite interesting to say, do they know about it? Do they, you know?
I don't think our history of policy development in these spaces would reflect that they draw on that much data in forming their policy
Yeah.
at all, would be my
Yeah.
most facetious moment.
Yeah.
Going to that, so Andy, so
Give us your freaking password.
so Andy's
P. P. 33 P. It's a P at the end.
specialist in junior schools.
Sorry, what was that?
Research, the idea of finding out nationally who are any specialists in junior
Yeah.
schools and the experiences of students,
Mm-hmm.
research informed data.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, could be a question that you could put in there.
I ask you a question because I've done some research on this stuff.
Yeah.
Is how do we define a specialist?
Mm.
Because I'd argue the specialists in the primary schools are specialists in learners, in curriculum, in pedagogy, that most of our secondary specialists
I guess
aren't.
it would
And
be just
so-
a teacher
so-
that's responsible for teaching only physics, health.
And so can I
Yeah.
finish? The specialists we see in lots of our primary schools go and deliver shit programs that are purely multi-activity.
Mm-hmm.
So I am yet to see, I think I've seen one in all the specialists I've seen in primary schools who have actually delivered the curriculum and not just the work. So I would argue, and I would always argue against specialists.
And I think a
Because
healthy
it's
active learning, healthy active learning initiative is around supporting the teachers to be able to deliver quality PE, the classroom teachers who are really absolutely spot on with their pedagogy, making connections, making curriculum links. It's not a silo.
They also know the kids.
No.
They also know the
Yeah.
You can't lie. And if we see integrated curriculum, we're drawing on multiple specialists.
Yeah.
Feed into curriculum design and that wealth of the shared expertise would say, actually that might move our kids through curriculum in a broader sense better than any narrowly defined specialist area does.
It was amazing to see the students in the movement tasks, you know, and when they weren't told about what to wear, you know, and they rocked up, and unfortunately it was sitting there ready to go. But stop ball, the data analyst said, "My God, no one stepped out of it." And usually in tasks, especially the physical ones, kids opt out. They say, "I don't want to do that," you know, because but in this task they didn't. Yeah, it's a really fascinating resource, I believe, that we could use more in our schools. And I know, you know, we put it up on pens, and people who get a hold of them do hold them dear and say, "Gosh, I can work with this. This is great." You know, it's got some really good ways. But I suppose it's, I think throughout the country it would be great. I mean, with Marissa coming on board as an advisor, going to pockets throughout the school, throughout the country.
Getting people, it's awareness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I would be interested to know, a question is, if you ask these questions in your school, did some of these tasks with your year 9s and 10s, your responses, would they be any more sophisticated than these? And so that would be my challenge to you, is to take some
Well,
of these tasks
I
out.
have an 8-year-old at the minute, so I'm actually going to go home and ask my 8-year-old a question.
Yeah.
You know, like,
And Vicky, I'm sitting behind here, Healthy Active Learning Advisor as well up in Auckland. One of the interesting things we've seen is when you go in and you unpack with teachers, there's a generous teachers pack. So you start unpacking, and I can see at level 1 and 2, the teachers kind of have a bit of an understanding, but when you get to level 4 and that curriculum is asking the teachers and the kids to do
Yeah.
this, often it's demonstrate and it's
Yeah.
what the teachers are going, yeah, we're doing that. And it's all around the demonstrate. Oh, I've seen my kids doing that. And you go, hold on, are you actually doing this part of the area as well? So that's what I've seen in my experience. And it tends
Wow.
to be
It took a while.
completely teaching that
Yeah.
whole area. And that's if they are.
The criteria's gone, yeah, I think we've done that.
So that's possibly where some of the
Yeah.
failure at year 8 is coming. That's just my own experience.
This is year 8 doing one of the tasks, so they've released some of them, and some of them they try, you know, got to keep secret, but you know, they want to keep a trend task going. So God, hope it doesn't appear forever in my life. I hope it goes. And we talk to them. I talk to them. I don't. Oh, I haven't even told you about this. They've got to get a 2 in their hoop. 2 in their hoop to win.
In between they got stopped and
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
hands up, stop. And then we change it and they have to empty their hoop. And so there's a marking schedule. Then we have assessors come in, they pick a kid, yellow bib, and they follow them and they look at this locomotion and running. They look at following the rules. There's a third thing.
strategy.
Yes, strategy comes at the end. Here we go. Too hard to hear, but there's another boy that task was really successful. I've got to keep going, but I can't go out of this. This is the marking. Okay, these are marking. All teachers come in and mark, and that's sort of done in November, December, in the holidays. And yeah, amazing PD. They watch these videos. And stop ball, not one up to date. Year 8 students acknowledge speed, agility to win the game, and the ones that were really clever knew to wait and watch, you know, where each other was going, and then look for the gap. Again, I just talked about that before. Māori students performed slightly better than non-Māori. Here we go. We did what we called a stepping patterns with the poi and the rako looking, and that was a criticism, you know, where will we showing to our Māori tasks in this? And so that task was there as well. Teachers of Year 4, this is interesting, more likely than Year 8 teachers to offer opportunities to learn games, dance or movement from different cultures, and that came from the teacher questionnaire. I'll just whip through. This one is like a ripper tag. Now we've done though, I was in one of those today. So I'll show you this one. Interesting what they're wearing. You know, you get different feel for the place that you're at. So the criteria for this one is in the book. Oh, no, it isn't, sorry. So we were looking at balance, different ways they could move. We had situations where, because it's a research-based assessment, they get, you know, marks paired up. Oh, this one. Now this is key. We say to them, you've got to go move in as many ways you can. So watch the little boy with the red tag. It was a classic. So how would you mark him? You know, when the question was. Yeah. Yep, right across, yep. The little boy with the red, you'll hear him speak because he's quite clearly heard in this setting when we ask the questions. So again, the game's got to be enjoyable, got to be accessible. Got limited space to carry equipment, move equipment around the country, so these 40 teachers have got to be able to carry it.
What was one strategy you used when you were trying to grab the tags?
When I was trying to grab the tags, I'd try and follow him around, and then I'd grab one while going for the other, so my hand would be easily seen over here. So he'd try to see that side, but then I'd grab it from the other.
Did that work?
Yeah.
Why do you think it worked?
Probably just because it's natural instinct for when you want to guard something and you see something coming to attack it, you'll put all your defence on this side, but then they can easily take it from the other.
Okay. What's another one of your strategies?
When I was taking it,
When you were trying to grab the tags?
yeah. So I really just like following them around that sort of helped with staying next to him. But then like I just try and feel around him for the tags even when I couldn't see them.
Did that work?
Yeah.
Why do you think that worked?
Because even though he might have been blocking me from being able to see them, I could still feel my way around and grab them.
Awesome. What's another strategy you used when you were trying to grab the tags?
Another one probably whenever he was running around, I'd try and follow him and then like corner him into a space, so then it was easier for me to get it without having to run around everywhere.
Good boy, did that work?
Yeah.
Why do you think that worked?
It worked quite well because then I didn't exhaust myself as much as rather than running around, so I had more energy.
Any other strategies you used when you were trying to grab
He
the
must have
tags?
stopped by now.
Not really.
Okay.
Now, interestingly, and if I just go to this, so these are the marking, this is the marking matrix we have for these tasks: high range, mid, low, locomotion, running. What strategies did you use to play? Now, we found that Pacifica and Māori students aren't able to always articulate their strategies. And that's where we would find that they were, marking lower, even though physically they were able to really show their skill level. And so that tells us another story, So that was really interesting for us. The other thing was in one of the, are we nearly time?
Sorry, I'm just going to die.
No, you can't. Okay, so another interesting thing was playing one of the games against a teacher. Some of our students were very humble or would never want to try and get a teacher out. Very interesting. Anyway, I'm sorry it sort of went a little bit askew there, but hopefully...
Boys and girls?
Sorry?
Any difference between boys and girls?
Yes, and it will be on there. It's the girls mark higher on critical thinking and lower on learning through movement. Not statistically huge, but that is at both levels.
Catherine, thank you very much. When this came out, we did a workshop with some ex-teachers, and we just were like, this is how you teach PE. This is looking wider than movement strand. This is the real essence of it, and if you didn't know how to teach PE, you could really look at this and go, this is really what it's about. I think awareness is the biggest thing that we need to do, and I'm really keen to talk to you about how we can do that.
Well,
but
you've got a
also,
nice big pile now you can go and give
I
out
haven't
to
got an
somebody. Hey, please, those of you that are here, grab them and take them back to school, because I know you know how to use what's in
and do
there.
what Catherine did, work through that task, activity, things like that,
Yeah.
that unpacking really works. Thank you so much. It's always
Thank
great
you.
to see you.
Yeah, thanks. And apologies we got stuck, but you got to talk, which is good.